Hello and welcome to the Animation Communication Podcast, your source for discussion about animation, film, fandom, and more. So please join your host, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, or KP, and Lauren Kizich, the Abbey Roadie, for today's discussion. If you like what you hear, please remember to support by giving a like, a follow, as well as subscribing to the main I Love Kim Possible a Lot channel on YouTube. Spread the word and keep being a part of a great community. This episode contains some mild adult language.
Hi everyone, welcome to the animation communication episode that was supposed to be in February for Black History Month, but that didn't happen because scheduling. And we had a few no-show guests, so we were like, well, I guess we're not having an episode this week, so that's why the order's been a little bit out of order if you're the two people that watch it or listen to it every week. But anyway,
this is what happens when you try to multi-schedule multiple guests and then trying to juggle all that. But
yeah, just generally, if you ever get asked to be a guest on a podcast, just show up a little early in case something goes wrong, because there's a 95% chance something will go wrong, and then Lauren and I cry in the background. It's fine, it's fine. I'm not gonna,
Yeah, at least today, everybody was totally fine, so it's all good. But yeah, it was. I'm glad we were finally able to get everybody together today. So yay!
We rounded all the people. All right, so we're no news because we have a roundtable discussion thingy bob. So there's just too many people to do news.
Yeah. This is our first podcast with we have 3 new guests with us today.
So and then we're just gonna ask some general why are you a creator? What's up? Kind of questions. But hopefully we'll have some natural points of discussion. That's not just hey, how's it like being an African American? Because that's a weird anyway, we were trying to word it was a good question to ask about Black culture that's not just very awkward in the phrasing. So hopefully the discussion will be actually pretty good. So I guess we can start from sketchy and go from right to left. As far as, why don't you guys introduce yourselves and tell people what you do? We have 2 YouTubers and 1 artist person, lady. So.
All right. What's cracking, everybody? I'm Sketchy the Changeling, also known as Sketchy Bug. I'm both a YouTuber and an artist. I do both.
Oh, okay.
YouTube. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
YouTube. Oh, surprise.
Yeah.
So a lot of people know me from YouTube, and then I was always an artist, but as my work evolved, I started to build my own presence as an artist. So now there are people that know me as an artist and don't know me as a YouTuber, on some Hannah Montana shit. So
it's the best of both worlds.
Ooh, throwback. So
Lauren, go sit in the corner.
I do art and YouTube, and I'm just out here vibing. I'm able to live off my work, which not a lot of artists are able to do, and I'm just here being a Black man with opinions and time.
Okay, Adam, why don't we go to you next?
Okay, cool. My real name's Adam, but for the sake of
if we want to cut that, we can cut that. So if you're not comfortable with it, we can
Oh no, it's cool. Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to make sure, because some people are you expose my mortal name to the masses. I have to hide.
All right. Okay, hello, hi. My name is Adam, but you can call me Cash. I'm 22, I'm in Brooklyn, and I am also a YouTuber and artist at the same time. I'm definitely on the small side of the spectrum, honestly, but that's fine. Currently, I'm trying to get better at character design. In terms of YouTube, a lot of my stuff leans more into the whole animation review section of that corner of YouTube. But no, I do videos of anything, honestly. I just love nerd culture, and I just definitely have really big aspirations of one day getting into industry, and last year just really kick down to high gear. But since I'm currently on my last semester of college, I don't have a lot of time to YouTube or art. But, I'm just vibing.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
same boat, but like COVID happened, so you try not to beat yourself up about it.
and you're in good company. You're in the right place to talk nerd stuff. So, I mean,
that's the common denominator, I guess. I was gonna be like ratio. I'm like, is that the right math term?
I'm too gay to know what math is, so.
What is
Ain't
the
that
math?
the mood?
I took a couple math classes in college and then like removed it from my brain because I'm like, this is it. I never have to count again. I'm done. So
Once I was done, I was done.
yeah.
Oh man.
Deuces.
I specifically
remember
took
and I'm checked out. I'm good.
I specifically took my major because it had like no math in it at all. Like
Yeah, I'm not trying to stay in that toxic relationship. I need to want better for myself. You know what I mean?
Okay, Carousel, why don't you
Oh,
introduce
yeah,
yourself?
sure, I'll go ahead now. Not like I have a choice in the last one. Okay, I'm Miranda, but everyone knows me as Carousel Unique. I'm an artist in the fandom. I'm pretty lower to mid-tier, but I have friends in high places, which is why I'm here. I'm also a New York-based college artist. I'm telling the truth. I'm also a New York-based college artist, and just trying to exist on the internet, which is a very scary prospect. But I'm doing my best so far. I haven't gotten into any major controversies yet, so just got the board up there that says how many days until controversy, and I'm just every day I can add a number and not subtract it. It's good by me.
Yeah, and I'll add a little side ramble before we get into the topic. So back when I did pony stuff, I would ask random people on DeviantArt to do thumbnail art. Me thinking like, oh, it's fun, like someone who might not get to do this normally would get something to do. But then I don't do that anymore because people would take it the wrong way. Not knowing we were nonprofit would be like, oh, she just doesn't want to pay people for art. So Carousel was one of the thumbnailers for a while ago. I think it was Honest. It's the one where it's the My Little Pony episode where they're all young and Big Mac talks a lot and they go to the horse hospital. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember.
Where the apple lies.
Yeah, where they turn the glue factory. So she was one of the cool ones that I remember. As I'm kind of moving on to different things, there's some people who are like, oh, I did thumbnail art for you, and you're neat. I'm like, yay, not everyone hates me.
I had a good working experience with you.
Yeah, there was actually one time where I got messaged by KP to do thumbnail art. This was years ago.
Oh yeah.
And my art wasn't all that. My art wasn't all that back then. So plus I was I had a lot of other stuff to do at the time. So the only reason why I declined was because of time constraints.
Oh yeah. I don't really care. That's cool. That's fine. I still want people to if they want to volunteer, do it under their own fruition and think about what they're getting out of it and not just doing it because I asked. That always makes me feel slimy. So no.
Right.
Okay, Lauren, you're the question lady. So why don't you start asking the questions?
All right. I guess we'll start with a very general question for all of you, and you can go around. It doesn't matter which order. But what inspired you to pursue art/animation? What was probably maybe your earliest inspiration to give you your start?
Okay. I guess we'll just go in the order that we introduced ourselves. What inspired me to get into art? Honestly, I've been into art for as long as I can remember. My earliest exposure to the idea of, oh, I can draw things is, believe it or not, watching Blue's Clues as a kid. Whenever Steve would find the clues and draw them, it's you can make pictures with crayons. Word? Say less. So, yeah, if there was a Blue's Clues fandom, I was in it. I had the...
Oh, there still is to this day.
Yeah,
yeah, but this was 1990, whatever. So
yeah,
it's I had the inflatable thinking chair. I had my own handy dandy notebooks, and I had the lunch boxes. My mom was a school teacher, so I had a bunch of Blue's Clues computer games. I I was in
Oh,
it.
oh yeah, I rock with those computer games. Don't get me started.
I ordered some off of eBay just to play them on stream a couple years back, and that was fun. But
Man.
yeah, that's what got me into it. And then like I think it was around grade school, like 3rd or 4th grade, where I started drawing comics of my favorite cartoon characters.
Mm-hmm.
And then around high school, I started making my own original stories. And then I was like, you know what? I actually do want to go to art school. And I had went to a art focused school in New York for my last 2 years of high school, and went to college in Atlanta, got my degree in animation, and here I am.
Did you go to SCAD?
I applied. It was my top choice, and I did get accepted, but it was expensive.
Oh yeah, I also did the same thing. Like even with scholarship, it's so like expensive. And
Yeah,
just, like,
so I ended up going to the Art Institute of Atlanta, and you know, there were pros and cons. I definitely wouldn't trade my experience because I met a lot of really cool people, and I liked a lot of my professors, and I made the most of it. So I as much as I would have liked, I would like to wonder what it would have been like if I went to SCAD. I don't think I would want to exchange it for the people that I met at AIA.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Basically, if you don't like, a lot of the art schools in America are like scams, like low key a little bit. Like there's these huge like SCAD, for instance. I think it's like $100K for a degree or something like that, something crazy. So you trade like your soul to get an art degree, and like also the thing that I've learned, like especially for schools like SCAD, like they don't exactly care if you're a good artist as well. Like they just want you to be able to foot the bill. So I took a dual enrollment class in SCAD like when I was in college, and there were like some bad artists, and I was like, oh no, you're paying $100K to like get slightly better but still not employable. I'm sorry, fams.
Yeah, part of the reason why I'm not too upset about not getting into SCAD is because like I think like it was sometime after I had graduated and got my own apartment. It was when it was a big article that was published by a former student about like mental health, and apparently like the workload is crazy there, and
yeah, I think
over
I heard
there
about
like
that article.
Yeah, over there SCAD apparently stands for sleep comes after death. Like look it up. Like it sounds like I'm lying, but I'm not.
No, I wouldn't doubt it. It makes me wonder if that's kind of like the same situation with Cal Arts, because
that's what I wonder
because
too.
it's so art focused, because it's technically an art institute when you think about it. It's so heavily focused on just that versus like a university, which is covers all the subjects, and then you can have your major.
Yeah. The moral of the podcast is don't go to SCAD.
Next up on our guest list, we have a person from SCAD.
We're a new podcast. Welcome to our first episode. It's fine.
All right.
Yeah. Who else?
That's pretty
Who
much
else
it
would
for
like
me.
to go?
Oh yeah. So it's my turn. Okay. So in terms of my like artistic origin, so to speak, well, as expected, I've always like grown up with like a bunch of cartoons. I was always like making little like scribbles, like for as long as I've like been around, honestly. But if I remember anything, when I came up to New York, in 2004, that's when I was able to catch Kablam, like for reruns, and still like one of my favorite shows to this day, because of the fact that like it's just got like a bunch of like different art styles for each of its segments, and especially like the whole main Henry and Junior shorts by Mark Merrick. The main thing that I had liked about the Henry and June shorts that Mark Merrick did was because it was like, everything about it was just like a whole just different approach to art and animation. And it's like, hey, you don't need to draw a specific style in order to be good. It's more about expressing yourself. So like over years, over that time, there are a lot of these like bumpers and stuff. Especially the ones from Nickelodeon, like the mid to late 2000s, where they actually like showed the creators like drawing and storyboarding behind the scenes. I used to love stuff like that. So that's what really got like the noggin just like jogging between that and just being a young kid to Sonic fandom. And it was while I was in high school. That's when Steven Universe hit me big, and I was really into that community as well. And that's when I learned like a bit more of the technical side, thanks to like Tumblr having a lot of crew blogs for shows. So I had like a pretty basic knowledge, but still like some sort of knowledge about stuff like boarding guides and like going like model sheets and all that stuff. And just between that and now, I've been able to just like network with a bunch of like other artists and stuff. And I'm definitely not in college for an art major, I can tell you that much. But again, like I definitely aspire to like someday be in the industry myself, and I think I'm on the right track.
That's good. Yeah, I think it's cool that there's not one singular way to go where you need to go and be where you need to be. It's especially in just like, I think if anything, even like the pandemic has even shown us that as long as everything adapts, there's like new ways to be able to be successful, especially in a digital era,
right?
Where it's just that the world is just smaller and it's just easier to connect.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I don't know if anyone else can relate, but like my personal experience is like I wasn't like the best artist like in my classes years whatnot, not by a long shot, but whenever like I had like an old classmate like catch up with me, they were like actually like surprised that like I was an art major. It got to the point when even when I was doing my first internship, which is like a community service type of thing at a local day hab, even they were like, you know what, you're good here, but you should really be in this art thing. Like everyone was telling me that. So it's like, I gotta like take the hint, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
How about you, Carousel?
Sorry, I was about to sneeze. Okay. So my artist origin story, which is basically my supervillain origin story, is that my supervillain origin story for art is that I was not a very popular child in school, so I was often left to my own devices, and I would just draw because I had undiagnosed ADHD and a lot of free time on my hands at recess, not getting played with. So, doodling came naturally. I, like my fellow company here, I too grew up loving cartoons and Blue's Clues, and everything about watching cartoons made me feel better when I was alone. And I didn't actually mean to go into art properly. I mean, I drew Warrior Cats art, which is so embarrassing, but I own it. I drew a lot of Warrior Cats art and eventually got into My Little Pony, but I went to high school for performing arts, actually. I have theater training and I have a performing arts degree. In theory, I could have gone to college for that, but I just, over the course of my high school experience, I just found myself more and more invested in trying out different art techniques and such, mostly as a distraction from how awful that school was. Shout out to Repertory. But it was a very awful, very unprofessional school environment. So I was often left to my own devices in school and in classes. So I would do a lot of drawing to compensate for that. When they would set us up to do Rosetta Stone instead of actually teaching us Spanish, like, teachers do, I basically just breezed through Rosetta Stone and then spent time on MS Paint impressing my classmates with honestly very mediocre art at the time, but it was very good to practice. I got an art award from my school at graduation, even though it is not an art school. They just gave it to me because, so, you draw. And I did. Yeah, exactly.
You need to look
so
fancy.
we give you an award so that you have something to do at graduation. Because God forbid we ever give you a singing solo. So I got an art award in college and before college, and then within college I was going to do music, and then the ADHD kicked up a notch, and I found I couldn't focus on music theory as well as I wanted to, and I was just like, it's more of a hobby at this point. And art just became something that it was always a comfort for me. So studying it in college, while a bit of a scary prospect because everyone tells you art doesn't go anywhere, it was just something I really felt invested in pursuing further. And now I'm getting my degree in studio art. It's taking forever, but I'm doing it because it's something that I care about. And while I do that, I also draw cartoon pictures for the internet occasionally and get money for it, which is good because college is expensive. Most of my Patreon money and most of my commission money goes towards taking care of stuff for college and taking care of any expenses that might come up. And I'm incredibly grateful that I have a mother who helps me pay for my tuition. But, you can only go so far with, relying on other people to do that stuff for you. So I'm glad that I have art as a means to supplement any expenses. And it's also just fun. I've made a lot of friends, present company included. So it's just been really nice.
Yay.
Oh. Yeah, don't even feel bad about being in the Warrior Cats fandom, because before I got into MLP, I was into Alvin and the Chipmunks, so don't even...
I'm glad you know my struggle.
I like the live-action movies.
I feel like there's all these shared roads that lead to My Little Pony and then divert out into similar directions. Like, I feel like, to a degree, it was like, some people were Warrior Cats, or they were some other fandom. There's sometimes even like some people were like Care Bears or Littlest Pet Shop or anything like that. And then My Little Pony happened. Okay, let's all converge here. And then My Little Pony ended. Okay, we go back out into Warrior Cats or into furry fandom stuff. Or we go like, I think it's what they all said. It was like, what was it? Bronies just turned into furries after the show ended.
Nah,
I mean, the Venn diagram between bronies and
I was gonna say, I'm like, I don't think it was a turn into. I think it was just they were one all along. So I mean,
I knew about that before I knew about bronies.
Yeah. It's a flat circle. It's just
what
it's all
came first, the brony or the furry?
Welcome to our podcast, where the conversation are furries bronies or vice versa, or they're the same thing.
It's all furries. Always has been.
Tomato.
All furries.
Poor Adam, he's probably afraid. I regret things now.
Now, I know we kind of like touched on it a little bit in your inspirations of growing up, like what inspired you to pursue your craft. What were maybe some like other creative inspirations, be it a person or a character or anybody that maybe influenced your style or your storytelling or anything like that?
It's hard to say, because for me, I draw inspiration from like so many different things. Like, my approach to like inspiration is that if I see something I like that I like from something that I'm watching, and I think it'll work for what I want to do, then I'll try it. Like, even now as an artist, seeing other artists do their work, and I'll be like, I kind of like how that artist draws noses. I'm gonna see how that looks in my style. Or I like the way this artist does their shading. I'm going to see if I can replicate that. And it's like, I spend my entire life Frankensteining all the cool things that I liked into something that I can call my own. And I feel like as far as my art is concerned, I don't think I feel like it takes a while for you to actually develop a style of your own. And I feel personally that mine didn't start to show until like, I want to say 2018. And that just goes to show you how long of a process it is. But it's a fun process if you take it for what it is, though.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm inspired by anything and everything.
Yeah.
No, that's totally justifiable considering it's like, I mean, you never know. It's just whatever hits you, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah, if it makes anyone feel better, like every time, like all throughout high school, my dad was like, I don't know, your art's kind of questionable. Like, I don't know if you want to do this professionally. And it took like, probably like until like my senior or junior of college where he was like, oh, wow, you can actually art. I'm like, yeah, Dad, thanks for noticing, Dad. So he's just like, oh, imagine what we could do if like you were in school earlier. And I'm like, yeah, Dad, thanks for your art education that I didn't get, that I've had to kind of like catch along with and stuff. So luckily I have Lauren, who's just like, Lauren, is this good? And then she's just like, that's okay. And I'm like, okay, gotta redo it. So
Yeah, I kind of went through a similar thing where like I didn't have as much resistance. Like my dad was very supportive, but there was a little bit of resistance from my mom, not because she didn't believe in me, but rather she was very concerned about how viable art is as a career.
Right.
And her being, she worries about me a lot, especially as a child when I was growing up, like being like the awkward weird kid. So when I was younger, one thing that she would always worry about is how self-sufficient I would be once I was out on my own. And it didn't take long for her to see just how much I could do with what I had. And the more time went on, the more she realized that I was able to, make something of myself. Not that she ever doubted me, but mom's
Right.
worry.
Yeah, of course.
anyone else want to add to that before we move on?
Oh, are we still gonna talk about like creative inspirations or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just want to double check. Well, first if I can say like that experience I can definitely relate to like almost to a T. Except for the fact that my mom really wanted me to, and she still does, wants me to like pursue some sort of quote unquote normal career because she's still kind of like iffy on the idea of like having art even as a side hustle, even though I've had like multiple people tell me that I should be like pursuing this, and I know for a fact that if I even got like more support in like public school, like I'd probably have like more skill because I wasn't really like raised thinking like I could do it when I grew up. So now I'm just kind of like taking things into my own because all with COVID and everything, the sustainability of what my would be career would be is kind of up in the air. So I'm like, hey, like why not see if I can at the very least do some commissions on the side when I graduate. But when it comes to actual creative inspirations, a big one for me would be Ian Jones-Quartey. I had actually, like, when I was young, like, I want to say, like, the latter half of the 2000s, like, I ended up finding just, like, a lot of his old, like, Flash animations on YouTube, like, Knock Force, and, like, I was just, like, really inspired by it. And, it was just cool that, just to have, like, someone that, looked like me and, had a lot of, like, my nerdy interests, just, like, working on cartoons, even though I was way too young to see Venture Brothers, but, he was still making cartoons. That's something that I wanted to do. It's exactly why, when I found that he was on CV Universe and when he later got OKKO, which was, like, years after it got, like, its own pilot, that's when, it just, like, resonated with me, like, that much more. Because, like, OKKO, through everything that it is just like a passion project. It's unapologetically nerdy and dorky, and it's it's for nerds. In its DNA to just be a love letter to a lot of nerd culture, and it's just at the end of the day, it's just a really heartfelt story about coming to one's own, and that's why like it's forever gonna be like one of my favorite cartoons, like right next to Steven Universe, and Ian himself is one of my biggest inspirations.
Yeah, I love when you have, especially when you have stories that are that impactful. That's when you find, like, even if it's not always the visual inspiration, it's like the stories that inspire.
Right.
And I think that, and sometimes that even comes across in the visual storytelling actually quite often, because it's like, okay, that it's like it's almost like you couldn't tell the story any other way or in any other format, because it's like it wouldn't hit the same. And I'm so I always love to hear how so many different people are inspired in different ways by different media, because it's just like it's a little piece of themselves that you kind of get a little glimpse into.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just like seeing the effect of Steven Universe and how deeply it affected other people. I like that OKKO was so inspirational to you as well, and in hearing how it affected you, and just seeing that there's like a huge. So many people don't. They jump on the bandwagon of not understanding media. They jump immediately onto seeing like a thumbnail, and then they don't bother checking past it.
Right.
So I like to hear when people check out and actually get invested in a show and go, no, you gotta see this and believe it for yourself. Like, don't sleep on it.
Yes, exactly. And of course, since you brought up Steven Universe, of course that show was like hugely inspirational to me as well. It hit right when I was in high school, so that's when I was in my most like most like aspirational, like art wise. Meanwhile, like when OKKO dropped, I was just beginning college, but still like both important aspects of my life. But I remember it got to the point when actually and I know this story is gonna sound a bit far fetched, but at the time my mom, one of her college friends actually knew someone who worked at Turner. So I was actually able to get like a full like framed autograph poster from Rebecca and a couple of the voice actors. And I remember it came
Nice.
Cool.
Yes, and it came like right around my birthday, which was also right around the time when the show had come back from one of its many hiatuses. So like everything just it just like fell on the right time, and I just felt like a huge amount of confidence boosting just because of the fact that I have that.
Yeah, that's dope.
That is really cool.
Thank you.
I mean, Steven Universe is also one of my inspirations, as reluctant I am to admit that. I mean, I still love the show for all its faults. Don't tell Lily.
Yeah.
But I still love the show so much, despite how much objective wrong there is with the show. It did inspire a lot of the style I have as it exists now in terms of coloring. The rest of it was obviously inspired heavily by Equestria Girls, because I'm still on that brain rot years later, and I love children's books. So as time goes on, I try to incorporate more of that sort of soft children's book style, because if a digital career doesn't work out, I'd really love to get into the illustration side of art and storytelling. I'd love to make children's books. That's my dream. I mean, I love animation, but I don't know how to make things move with my brain. So drawing is more my.
It's not that hard. It just you just takes practice to kind of like remember all the things that you got to do. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely give it an attempt to learn, especially now that I'm going towards the expertise end of my degree getting. Now that I'm done with all the
gen
Spanish
eds.
class. Yeah, that too.
Ooh, when I got over my gen eds, I
now-
was ready.
Yeah, so I'm very excited to go into the meat and potatoes of getting my degree. But yeah, just children's books were always a big inspiration for me art-wise, and then also colors like Steven Universe and all those other whimsical little shows that came out in the 2010s. and then Equestria Girls, which to this day, still brain rot, still proud of it.
I feel like it's funny that the way Equestria Girls came about, and it's just seeing where it came. You know, it started from where everybody's going, "Oh no, they turned them into humans. This is like, you know, the show's going downhill, the series is going downhill." And then meanwhile, it's like it was actually a series that only got better and better as time went on, and actually got like really intense. And I'm like, this started out as just like, you know, like the Monster High cash and kind of line, really, but but because you had a bunch of passionate people working on the stories for it and trying to make it work, and they did. I think that's just like so cool that they were, I think, and so different about when My Little Pony came about and had the direction from Lauren Faust, you know, to launch it,
right,
to become something entirely new. And not just about selling toys, even if that was its purpose in creation and was the purpose of its original creation from way back in the 80s. It did go that direction, saying we're going to make sure we have a good story first and great characters first, and then the toys come after. But yeah, it was. I love hearing these kinds of things like the.
Yeah, like to avoid going too much on a tangent. Like it always baffled me, like the criticism for Equestria Girls, because it was always about like how it's supposedly a cash grab to sell toys, and I'm like, dog, you realize what show we're watching, right?
Yeah.
A show made to sell toys that ain't even for us. Like why are you surprised, and why can't you just like wait and see what it is? And like, yeah, the first film was rough, but clearly it improved with time. So that's why I never understood.
I'm actually nostalgic for the first film.
Like, and you know, people always want to find reasons to say that the show was going downhill. Like, y'all remember Twi'lek? I don't have to remind you.
Yeah, when that whole thing
came
down, I think that was when I got into the show. Was when people were losing their minds over Twi'lek.
Oh, what an introduction to this
Sketchy,
show!
can you translate for people that aren't bronies about like what we're talking about real quick?
Okay, all right, so, sure. All right, so
Sure.
the lead character of My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic is Twilight Sparkle. In My Little Pony, there are 4 types of ponies: unicorns, Pegasi, earth ponies, and then like alicorns, which have the gifts of all 3: the physical strength, the flight, and the horn and magic and stuff, right? So, Twilight Sparkle starts out the series as a unicorn, and she's a student of the princess, who's an alicorn. And she has a little character arc, and by the end of season 3, she ascends and becomes a princess herself, and she gets wings. And people, especially since we didn't know whether or not this was going to be the final episode of the show, because season 4 hadn't been confirmed yet, a lot of people thought that this was a bad idea, like making Twilight too special, or there was a bunch of different reasons. Like, some people thought it made Twilight a Mary Sue, whatever that means this week. Some people thought it made her too special. Some people thought it went against Lauren Faust's vision of there only being 2 alicorns, even though she no longer works on the show, and therefore her opinions are irrelevant. Like, all love to Lauren Faust.
Lauren Faust said she always intended for Twilight to basically become a princess at the end. I guess it was just not a matter of, you know, it being almost like playing that card too soon that people didn't know.
Yeah, like, all love to Lauren Faust, all respect to her, but like, people need to stop kind of just like going like, oh, this is not what the original creator wanted, when the original creator isn't on the show anymore, especially if they left of their own volition.
Yes.
Not to mention, Lauren Faust isn't Bonnie Zachary. that was for me specifically. Sorry, speaking to inspirations again real quick before we move on, because we're on this topic a lot. MLP as a whole, as all of the generations are a heavy inspiration for me. So whenever I hear people going, Lauren Faust wouldn't have wanted this, it was not the original, I'm like, she's not even the original creator. That's Bonnie, and you guys don't respect her. So, like, you know, maybe shut up. Team My Little Ponytails for life. Anyway, the show was never better than when it was inspired by My Little Ponytails. Okay, anyway, that's the hottest take of the night.
Yeah, like they only care about the original intent of whoever made whatever generation they came in.
Yeah.
Not realizing that it has decades of history and generations, and it's like with a history that rich, there's literally no way to please everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wish the show stayed more like G2.
Oh man. Sadly, like I can't like add too much in terms of the broader pony conversation because like it kind of like phased out for me a bit after the first Squishy Girls movie dropped. Not to say anything with its quality, I just life happened. But
people fall off. It's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's valid.
But it's just like hilarious because like when it comes to just talking about like the broader just things from like a broader franchise scope, this is exactly just me and my friends just like debating about Power Rangers, which is owned by the same people now, so small world.
Oh, don't get me started. That's gonna be a whole other conversation. Love it.
Yeah, it's funny to see like all of it. I just, again, that's what motivated me to even really give the show like a serious shake was because first of all, I just remember seeing My Little Pony like everywhere going like, I don't get it, I don't get why everybody's, which is, I know what every brony's start is, seeing people literally hot to trot over My Little Pony going, I don't get it, and then they watch it and they go, okay, I get it. But just seeing that whole discourse about Twilight becoming a princess was like, I'm like, okay, if people are this mad, I have to see why they're so mad.
I was like, y'all wildin'.
And that's what got me into going, okay, I gotta backtrack. Let me go all the way to the beginning and work my way up to this point. And I did. And now I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it now. I get why people are so passionate about this. It's so different from what I'd known of My Little Pony growing up that I'm like, okay, you know what? Yeah, I'm down. Let me see where this goes. And I was actually okay with the whole, Princess Twilight thing. I guess I was just because it's like, if they really made her OP, they would have made her, if she was a real Mary Sue, she would have been too perfect, no flaws, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. But when they went with her direction and going, she's awkward, she doesn't know how her wings work, she's trying to control the magic that she suddenly is like now more powerful, but she can't control it, kind of thing. So I'm like, again, that's what I like, is that magic is a means of a solution, but it isn't the solution in the show. Anything can go wrong with it if you aren't careful.
Right.
So it's like magic isn't the solve all. It's just a means of trying to get to the solution. So that's why I guess with her being an alicorn, it didn't bother me, because I'm like, okay, well, I see she can't really control it yet, and she's trying to step into this position she suddenly found herself in and didn't ask for. So yeah, I don't know. I think it was just so interesting to see how huge that discussion was in the fandom, and then just seeing the show only grow from there and get more darker and more serious in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like there are people that got into the show after Twilight became an alicorn and are surprised when they see that she didn't have wings in the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
Like that's how far
Because
we've
technically
gone.
she had wings longer than she didn't have wings.
Yeah,
That
way
puts
longer.
into perspective. Yeah, puts into
Oh,
perspective, huh?
man.
Because like it was like the show has like 220 episodes, I think, and she got her wings in episode like 60 something.
Yeah.
Adam's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I gotta
Ooh, the
go home
perspective of
and
that.
watch the rest of My Little Pony.
That's why it's like when people get mad over something, I'm like, dude, it wasn't even that long. Look how long the show went for after that.
Yeah, I'll be on the camp that like it's still kind of weird to me, but only because I kind of kept on waiting for them to be like, okay, like maybe there's some lore behind why like anyone can ascend to alicornism, and like it's still highly implied that Luna and Celestia were born that way. And then it just never really, like, the closest we get is Flurry Heart, which kind of confirms that you can do both, but that's not, like, I don't know, it never really answered the question it posed, so I'm still sitting here waiting, like, I hope the next, like, the sequel thing, the next gen, kind of touches on it and, like, maybe talk about the first horse that ascended to be an alicorn or something to, like, show, like, how it's possible with, like, magic midi-chlorians or something like that. But yeah, I get both sides. But if you're going into the show already knowing that it's happening, then you don't have as much of a beef with it than not knowing, if that makes sense. So
yeah, I honestly wasn't bothered by it since I was always in it for the characters.
I'm still waiting for Cadence's backstory to get some screen time. I know the show's over, but I'm still waiting for it. She got one in the books, and it was so compelling, and I'm the only person who has ever read that book, ever, I think, in the history of fandom. So I'm the only one who cares about her and Prismia, and her backstory is a Pegasus, and I can't. I'll go about this all day.
I just thought
I'll be on this all day.
Go ahead.
Midi unichlorians.
Oh, oh, that hurt.
Is that a Star Wars thing?
Yeah, we're doing
it's supposed
Star
to be
Wars.
what makes Anakin so special.
That sounds like a disease.
It's space magic. Anyway. I guess where we can go from here is because we're kind of talking about, the evolution of storytelling and how stories have changed, and we got this just new wave of stories and characters being shown in media. What are your opinions on the evolution of the animation industry, this new wave of diverse storytelling?
I think overall, I'm loving that we're getting a wider range of stories being told by a wider range of people. I do think that we have a lot more steps to take. What I hope doesn't happen is that we look at the increased diversity and go, oh well, that's it, equality achieved, because that tends to be what happens a lot when it comes to issues of equality and stuff like that. So that's what I'm hoping, because like my philosophy is that we can always be better than we are, and I don't think we should ever settle for what we have, and we should always, keep in mind our strengths while trying to learn from whatever weaknesses that we may have. Like personally, one thing that I'm not too fond of in a lot of animations these days is the focus on lore, because and that's the thing, but whenever I bring this up, people will automatically assume that I don't think lore is important, or that I don't think lore has any place in media, even though I never say that. But I feel as though lore doesn't make a good story. A good story makes good lore. I always use Avatar: The Last Airbender as an example, since that's a show that people love trying to emulate, and it's that we don't a lot of the stuff that we learn about the lore is on a need to know basis. What I mean by that is we don't learn about who killed Katara's mother until she goes looking for him. We don't learn about metal bending until Toph invents it. We don't know about how Zuko got his scar until that becomes a relevant plot point. The show doesn't try to, and ironically, the Dragon Prince, who's made by one of the people that made Avatar, falls into this trap of front loading the entire story with lore. And it's like, my thing of it is, I want to care about the characters and their situations first before you dump all of this exposition onto me, because you haven't given me a reason to care about your world or your characters or your story yet. Why are you dumping all of this on me so soon?
Right. Now, it's actually very funny that that we end up getting to this point, because one of my earliest videos, Wink Wink, was actually discussing this whole point in regards as to whether or not a story-driven show is automatically better because it has lore. But I'm focusing on the representation topic first. And I want to say that, yes, I think that we are definitely in a great spot now. We can always get better, as you said. But just a lot of the opportunities and a lot of perspectives I'm seeing now are stuff that I wish that I could have grown up with when I was a kid, just because it's just such a breath of fresh air. You don't really see a lot of stuff that has like this level of energy to just like tell a certain story or bring to light a certain concept without it really being having to be gimped in the process for the sake of making the TV. Say what you will about Steven Universe, but and again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong with this, but what I know is that Rebecca basically sacrificed everything in order to make Ruby and Sapphire kiss, and going forward, that's going to be like super important, because I heard from like other Zoomings I've been in, if not for that, other networks wouldn't have been willing to take the gamble with like other overtly LGBT characters. And it's just, yeah, again, just like very, very important. And of course, we can always have like more walks of life and more types of people be represented. But if this is what we're entering towards, I think it's important. As regards to lore, however, I remember being a bit like burnt out on stuff, actually, because when, like, for 2010s, when I get into Adventure Time, I was expecting, like, I wasn't, okay, so overall I did like Adventure Time, but when I was in high school, when it started getting a bit too deep into the lore, it just, like, I didn't dislike it, but I had to walk off because it felt like I was watching a different show. Meanwhile, when Steven Universe debuted around the same time, it was like, okay, well, now I have an idea as to what sort of story I'm getting myself into, but I still like that we had like a season or two that was just, just like a bit homey, more slice of life before we went fully deep into the space opera stuff. And I think it's always been interesting, because I've seen a lot of people where it's like they kind of sleep on a show if it has like a more like comedic or like down to earth introduction, but they don't show that interest until it gets more lore based. And I think for some shows, me being Star Versus, I really wasn't into that, because it's like, sometimes it's like, hey, the dynamic that I'm being presented here with just being like a kickback show that has like a little bit light action but still like fun. I like that. I like what you have. You don't need to add more to compensate to be like everyone else. But that's what I felt happened with shows like that. So it's why I'm a bit more hesitant when I see shows try to do that now. I think they're overall better with it, better with sticking the landing, but I'm of the field where it's like I have no problem if a show in general just wants to be comedic or just like more episodic instead of having a narrative, because it's just something that doesn't fit every show,
Yeah, it's definitely a good thing, and that's something that I like to let people know, is that like the whole thing about like episodic and serialization, a lot of people think that serialization is better just because like, oh, having a story with an overarching narrative is more compelling, and it's like, it's not an absolute. It depends on what kind of story you're telling,
right?
And and you can tell when a show kind of has a bit of an identity crisis, because you can definitely do both. There are shows that have done both, but like using Steven Universe as an example, there are a lot of times where episodes are ordered in a way to where something that requires urgent action is interrupted by like them just messing around on the beach, and it's like it makes it feel like the episodes are aired out of order when they're not.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that as we go on and as we observe how other shows have done it, we'll just get better at.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah. What do you think, Carousel? What are some of your thoughts?
I mean, I mostly just second everything that they had said already. I mean, when you put it so well. But yeah, I grew up on episodic television, so I definitely love the storytelling that we're getting now in terms of representation, and of course we can do better as they mentioned. But it's really affirming to see that. But there is definitely like a bit of seriousness that sticks in my craw because I'm just like, I just want to watch My Little Ponytails, man. I don't need any of this Starlight Michigas in my television. I just want to go back to like the good old days where they're trading expensive concert tickets for a box of pizza.
Oh yeah, like I completely agree. There's just a place for both, like not everything has to be like a high stakes adventure. Sometimes, you just want your character just like chilling out. And sometimes the whole show doesn't even have to be, just like deep lore or whatever. It's definitely more appreciative when you have a show and like within like the confines of its own story, it builds up to something huge but doesn't lose its soul. I think Big City Greens and Craig the Creek at the moment are two really good examples of something that really did that in spades. But, like, again, somebody just want to shut your brain off and just watch some silly pictures on your TV screen. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I love Craig of the Creek. It's such a good show. It's so soft.
And I guess that does segue into a similar question, or at least relevant question, and we kind of touched on it a little bit. Where do you think the industry is succeeding in representation, and where do you think it really needs to improve?
Well, I think it's succeeding in just showing that these other identities exist and allowing them to be more prominent in their roles. Where it needs to improve is how those stories are executed, and that requires allowing people from these communities to tell their own stories,
right?
Or at the very least, if you're telling a story from a perspective that isn't yours, at least try to learn from people that do have that perspective. Like I always think to Toonerific Tariq's video on How to Black, where it was basically like talking about writing black characters in cartoons. And one thing that he cites is an old sitcom from the 70s, Good Times. It was about a black family living in the projects, and the writing staff was predominantly white, but they took the time to ask, they ran the script by the actors, and the actors would go like, yeah, this sounds like something that we would say, or like, oh no, like that wouldn't happen. They basically like, it was like a culture check. And if we can have that level of care in the 70s, there's no excuse not to have that level of care in 2021 and beyond. And as far as LGBT representation is concerned, there are a lot of people in the LGBT community that can dissect these issues a lot more eloquently than I can. But from what I've learned from them, there is an issue with just having LGBT people exist. Like they, you don't have, and not every LGBT story has to be about struggle or the difficulties of dating as an LGBT person,
right?
And that makes a lot of sense to me as a black person, because as a black person, I don't want all of the stories about people that look like me to be about like abuse. That's a big thing, a big issue that a lot of black audiences have with Tyler Perry's works, because they're so interchangeable, because it's to the point where people had to wonder if he had a fetish for watching black women suffer, because so many of the storylines in Tyler Perry movies are like about a black woman being in an abusive relationship or struggling to raise her child in a low income household or something to that effect. And it's to the point where there was one movie called For Colored Girls that was basically just that. And
I remember that movie.
It got to the point where even the people that liked his work in the beginning were like, "Dog, what are you doing?" So yeah,
as an amateur Tyler Perry historian, which is another thing I'm deeply ashamed of because I've seen all those movies.
We all are.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, it kind of makes me think of, like, in general, like when a creator makes something and they continue to make that kind of creation over and over again, and and especially if they're like a popular creator, so their material gets all this coverage, and then it becomes stigmatized in a way where it just suddenly everybody, that's what they associate with that material, and then I think it creates the wrong image of things and stuff like that. And then it becomes harmful.
Right.
And so you have to, it's almost like you have to tread the line of going, like, you have to make sure that you're telling these stories and you're telling them properly, and you don't make that something that you repeat over and over. If it's a story that has to be shared, absolutely, but don't make that for every story, because then it becomes something like, oh, is it really this common? Oh, is this commonplace? And then it's just like, then it becomes harmful.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because again, using Tyler Perry as an example,
poor Tyler Perry.
he's one of the most prominent black directors, and you fall into these traps when you only have a handful of people within that community telling stories and not broadening your horizons and spotlighting other creators from those communities. That's how it's not just about diversity in the sense of having some black creators, but also having a variety of black creators, because there's a variety of different black stories, a variety of different LGBT stories, Asian stories, Latinx stories, etc., etc., etc. Because more often than not, no demographic is a monolith, and by allowing more people of these groups to tell their stories, we get a wider variety, and it paints a broader picture of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. To personally, throw my 2 cents in, like I definitely think, of course, like while we are in a good spot, we can improve. When I think about like some of the stuff that's been discussed, one thing that immediately comes to mind, I already talked about Greg the Creek, so might as well, Kipo on Netflix if anyone's seen it. So, of course, I'm probably gonna butcher his last name, Rad Seacrest. Again, like anyone who can correct me, please do. But obviously he isn't black. But the 3 main characters, Kipo, Benson, Wolf, and you can count Dave too. They're all black, and just through watching this, I felt even if like the race like didn't play like a huge part of the story, I still felt like the aspects of their personality, how these characters were portrayed, and written, it was very realistic. And I think that's also something that needs to be remembered too, because like I think when people hear representation, they feel like the whole story, the whole show has to be about like an experience, like the black experience, when in reality, while that's good, it doesn't really have to be like that. Just write them well. We could have like all these diverse characters and just like fantasy and sci-fi and like all these different types of stories, all these different genres. And I definitely do agree with the sentiment where if you're not of that specific walk of life, it's very important to talk to people who are in order to get their perspective. So hopefully the industry can eventually sideline as to having these voices speak for themselves. Like for instance, like for me, like even though black representation is something that how do I put it? Like it can be better across the board, but there is still a slant in the favor of black male characters. So ideally, if we had like more like black women and black MB AFAB people, like in positions of power who are able to tell their stories, that would bring a much more just having more interesting stories, just something we desperately need, and especially now.
And have your black girls be voiced by someone other than Cree Summer.
Isn't Cree Summer?
I love Cree Summer. Cree Summer is one of my favorite voice actresses. But even she is like, y'all, I voice all the black girls. Y'all can do better.
It's like Cree, I love.
I will take my check in the mail. I don't do voice acting, but if you need one that badly,
if even Cree is saying it, then you know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, especially even so, like looking at the like the voice acting. If you look at the voice acting community, and it's hard to be a voice actor, and especially to be a successful voice actor. Like you have your veterans, but they built themselves up to that point, and otherwise it's like really hard to try and compete with the veteran voice actors. When again, like Cree has been doing it for forever, but even she's saying, I can't be the only person. There's tons of voices that still have yet to be able to share their stories and their experiences and convey it through their performances. So it's like, it's like I'd love to see more of that. I know there's tons out there. So it's like, I think that's also why it's like really great to have, like, again, the internet showing us the importance of that variety and highlighting voices that have not had the platform in like mainstream Hollywood or anything to do that. So yeah, there you go. It's like
yeah,
and never hesitate to, like, if you come across a person of color or LGBT person whose work you love in voice acting or whatever medium, don't be afraid to shout them out on social media or whatever. Like for example, like I'm a big fan of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and it was I watched both the Japanese version and the English dub, right? And as the English dub of Part 4 was reaching like the third act, there's a character that comes in named Hayato, and me being into the show, I'm always looking forward to seeing, okay, who's gonna voice this character, and I hear that Hayato, who's a boy, is going to be voiced by Laura Stahl, and I was like, I've never heard of her. And I looked her up and I was like, oh, she's a black voice actress? Okay, word. and then like Hayato is introduced and I'm seeing his story for the first time and everything. And just hearing Laura's performance. And there was one episode towards the end where Hayato is like really emotional and everything. And I hear Laura's performance and I was like, yo, this is crazy. Like, I was in love with that scene. I went on Twitter and I was like, yo, just watch the latest episode. Shout out to Laura Stahl for her performance here. It was great. Like, don't be afraid to shout out minority artists that you love. Let them know that their work is appreciated.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, you can go first.
No, it's fine. You can. I was gonna change the subject. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The only thing I would say is that I completely agree. Because I had actually gotten to Sailor Moon, I think like maybe 2.5 years ago. Though I have like no previous attachment to like any ever like voice cast or whatever. But when I was watching and then I got into see Sailor Jupiter and I was like really digging her voice, and then I figured out she's a black woman, and like in and of herself, like she has like this great story about how she's been inspired by that character for like her whole life, and she's like a big mental health advocate on top of that. So I was just like really super engaged with not only the character but like her as a person. So when I was finally able to meet her at a convention, I think like maybe like 2.5 years ago, it was like super great. So yeah, like absolutely, just like telling like any of these people just that you appreciate them, something that's like really important.
Mm-hmm. So what I was actually going to bring up was speaking of engaging with as a fandom with the works that we. It's sort of related to this point. I think a thing that I think creators of these shows that we watch can do better is honestly managing the show in the way that keeps the fandom from taking it away from black the black characters that they create and the fandom that they occupy. I bring this up because as we were talking, I remembered the Owl House actually has very specific representation for me as okay, I'm black, I'm Latina, I'm bisexual, and I'm a weirdo with ADHD. And so Luce is a character that's very special to me. She's one that I would have loved to grow up with, and she's a character that like I'm so happy that we currently have the atmosphere and the culture that we can have a character like her that so specifically represents me. And I see that the show teases Amity as a character a lot, which is fine. She's a good character, but they've done it in such a way that raises my alarm bells because they've set up Amity as this mysterious side character, and magically the fandom seems to focus on the Blights and the twins and Amity and her romance with Luce instead of Luce and her romance with Amity, pivoting Amity as the character because she's a useless lesbian. And don't get me wrong, I love her as lesbian representation, but I feel as though something that I would love to have the Owl House staff be aware of in season 2 and going forward in their interactions with the growing Owl House fandom is that they have a responsibility to keep the story focused on Luce, and they have a responsibility to, and I feel like they have at least partial responsibility in making sure that the fandom does not overshadow who is supposed to be their main character with characters like Ida and Amity who are white and just
right.
It just feels like something that's really important as well. Like, if you are a white creator and you're telling a story with a lead of color, then you have the responsibility not only to learn about the stuff that you're talking about, but to make sure that that message sinks in. Because how many times have we seen shows where they just sort of let the fandom run rampant and they get bad reputations and they do terrible things within fandom to their fans of color. I don't think I need to remind anyone here about the slave owner Applejack situation.
Oh, God.
So yeah, just I think as we go forward, because there's so much more internet engagement than we used to have, that is going to unfortunately be a minefield that creators I think have to go into prepared to deal with and manage, because we can't have that separation of creator and fandom as much as we used to. So if you're going to have a show and you're going to have a lead of color, I think you need to make sure to keep the focus on them in such a way that you can't sideline a character like Luce for Amity.
Yeah, because we all know the POC best friend trope where they only exist to help out their white best friend, and it's that's a trope that applies to side characters, like the sidekick. Don't have a show with a POC lead character only for them to just end up being the sidekick of their own show. If that's not that's gonna be a ultimate.
That's problematic.
And I'm just glad that it's something that was talked about, because it's when I was seeing some of the stuff go down. Because there was a point in time where both Owl House and Amphibia were airing episodes. I lean more into Amphibia for the record, but it definitely felt especially on social media, Twitter, it definitely felt like there was a different vibe as to how the show was being talked about after Lumity was a thing. Even though I didn't really feel that much from the show, when I saw the post on my timeline, it was really only focusing on that aspect, and it kind of I remember something rubbed me a certain way on the Amphibia subreddit, where it's they were kind of glad that there wasn't so much a focus on like LGBT shipping, because like while it would be a good element, a lot of people, after seeing what's happened with the Owl House, were kind of nervous about that taking hold of the show. And it's like, it's definitely a complicated issue, and I definitely applaud just how the character of Amity was made, because it was someone who I just thought was just to be a typical bully character, have so much more depth. But it really does need to just like bring it back in, not just like focus on like the overall story, but the fact that this is still Luce's story.
Yeah, I actually saw some of the same stuff with Amphibia and Sasha's popularity.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at both of those shows and I'm like, gee, I wonder what it is about these two bully characters that suddenly the fandom really wants to see way more of them and less of the leads. I don't know what it could be. Points to my own brown skin. I don't know what it could be, and I mean, yes, they are interesting characters and I like them, but after a certain point, especially existing in fandom as a person of color, you have to wonder, like, gee, I wonder why these characters are suddenly getting sidelined in their own show. Like, again, it's such a thing that happens, and you would think it wouldn't be a thing in the My Little Pony fandom, and then you remember all the G5 stuff, and then it's like, that too.
I think a part of it is also
it's like these characters aren't even human.
Yeah, I think a part of it is also people's fascination with villain redemptions.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people will look at the optimistic hero of the story as like the boring one because they're so straightforward, and like the more complicated rival is inherently more interesting just because they're complicated. And you see it all the time, especially in anime and shows that are influenced by anime. Like, a lot of people think Goku is a boring character in Dragon Ball Z and prefer Vegeta. I mean, I prefer Vegeta not because I think Goku was boring, but because I just think Vegeta is cool. And then like in Naruto, a lot of people like Sasuke. I know, but a lot of people like Sasuke, and a lot of people think that Naruto was boring because he's the optimistic hero, and that kind of mindset bleeds into Western animation, especially as we get older, because a lot of people that grew up on anime as it was coming to the West are now adults and are now making their own shows, and a lot of the behaviors that were not behaviors, but rather
tropes.
a lot of the tropes that they watched from the stories that they enjoyed. We pick up a lot more from the media that we consume that we want to admit.
Yeah.
And I definitely have something. I definitely wonder what it is about villain redemption arcs that are so coded white, because they kind of feel very they feel very white coded. I don't see or recall many modern villain redemption arcs where the protagonist wasn't white or white coded or had a white voice actor, if you want to talk about Starlight, because I'm not here to define anyone's race headcanons for the main six, but Starlight's definitely a white girl, and if you fight me on this one, I'm right. She lived in a gated community. She's Caucasian, please. But yeah, just it is something that I'm interested in, because I don't remember the same fixation on Bismuth.
Yeah, like I was
the only
actually
major
about to bring
black
her up.
redemption arc.
Ooh.
Oh, well then yeah.
Yeah, I was actually about to bring her up because, obviously, these are all complex questions, but in an attempt to make the answer a little bit more visible or help us come to an answer in some way, I do think that a lot of it is just unaddressed prejudice. Because it's become so normalized that we don't question it. We don't question why black-coded characters are routinely characterized as more aggressive and unjustifiably angry. We don't question why Hispanic women are characterized as easy to get mad, even when it's for a justifiable reason. It's so ingrained into our culture, and the hard part about it is that because it's normalized, when someone brings up like, hey, maybe we should question this, a lot of people will get defensive about it because, for some reason, a lot of people think that because they enjoyed something that has racial undertones, then that must mean that they're racist. And that's not the case because, I feel like what makes you prejudiced is how you respond to the revelation.
Yes.
It's like, hey, there are some squicky undertones in how Steven Universe characterizes his black-coded characters.
Mm-hmm.
And if it depends on how you respond to that. Like, if you respond to that with like, no, it possibly couldn't be that, you're the racist one for seeing these things. Even though there was a whole amethyst design that was called Chola bodysuit, which is a derogatory term for Hispanic people. But okay, I guess I'm the one seeing it. Yeah, so it wasn't even the focus of the shot. It was just like a picture of amethysts, other designs, and the bodysuit one was off to the corner, and I just watched it, and I was like, wait a minute, wait, what? Like, we gotta be willing to ask ourselves these questions about the things that we consume, and acknowledging it doesn't make you a bad person because you didn't know it until now. So
right,
don't get so scared, man.
It's fine. We all learn. We all grow.
Just to bring some to the table, just to circle it back a little bit. But I found the idea that the villain redemption arc is white code. No, that idea in itself is interesting. I hadn't really considered that before. When it comes to like the Owl House versus Amphibia in this regard, personally, what I liked about season 1, and I guess like a lot of like season 2 that we've seen thus far, was that we didn't see Sasha often, but when she did make an appearance, it still left an impact. So you're like still like thinking, oh, so I wonder, how could this like story converge eventually? But when Marcy was introduced, another POC lead, like her story directly converged with Anne's instead. So you actually saw a completely different dynamic, and it was just inherently more supportive, so I was just engaged with, again, like I'm bad with words, but it's like, I didn't feel like, Sasha being introduced, like, took away anything from Anne. It's more like, the actions that she did not only left an impact with the characters and how they're still like trying to process things, but with the viewers as well. But meanwhile, with Emily getting more development, I can absolutely see why someone would think that Alluce would be getting sidelined, because they all are sharing the same area. They're all in the same location. They all go to the same school. They talk to the same people, etc. So I definitely think, again, just like balancing things out would help. But you are also right in the fact that I don't really know any like characters of color that like even like have the quote unquote like villain thing, let alone like being redeemed. Like, I mean, I guess you could say Jasper, for the sake of it, because Black VA, if you want to bring the code argument, that's fine. But they admittedly did kind of drop the ball for her in the future, and I think it even said originally for the movie there was like a whole like subplot that ended up getting cut. So, again, we could all be better with this in terms of just like how we think of these characters, what lens we see them in, and just like how they interact with everyone around them, what impact that leaves.
Yeah.
Right. It's definitely something that we can afford to at least have a conversation about, because maybe the conclusion is that it's not problematic, but we can at least entertain the discussion and think about it and weigh the pros and cons and stuff like that. At least be willing to talk about it.
Right, because nothing is immune from criticism.
You said it, bro. You said it.
Yeah, and I guess to kind of bring it full circle, because now that we've kind of discussed, direction things are going now for the industry and where we could go, what stories do you enjoy sharing, or do you think you would like to share as part of your legacy, if not for like this, you had the opportunity to even share it as part of like the as part of the animation industry or just entertainment industry in general?
Like what stories that we would like to see, or what stories that we would like to actually make ourselves?
Either, whichever one. I feel like, because I know we're all storytellers here, so it's like, I guess it's seeing what kind of stories you'd like to share or you would like to see being shared, depending on what ideas you already might have. I guess.
Well, for me, two ideas I'd like to see more of are one, I want to see more. I want to see more stories about Black nerds. Like,
Yes.
I love me some Static Shock. It just got added to HBO Max, and I just watched an episode with him in Africa, and he's like, "Man, when I'm here, I don't feel like a Black kid. I'm just a kid. Is this what it's like for you all the time, Richie?" And like that, like they were saying stuff like that in 2003, dog. Like that. And like I want to see more Black nerds. 2015 movie, Dope. It's a Black nerd movie.
Oh yeah,
Love
that was
one
a good
too.
one.
There's more Black nerd representation, and particularly Black female nerd representation. I can't leave my sisters out because y'all need it more than we do. For real.
As a Black female nerd myself,
Like, all Black nerds, like Black male nerds, female nerds, trans nerds, non-binary nerds. All the Black nerds. Let's get more of them. But also, I would also like to see Black families where, like, definitely want to see more families with present parents, where both parents are present, but also showing that if a Black family has separated parents, that doesn't mean that the family can't still be happy. And one prominent example is the sequel to that. So Raven's home. Like, Raven's a mom and she's raising twins, and she married her boyfriend from the show, Devon, but they're divorced. However, they don't hate each other. They still talk. They're still friends. And the only reason why they don't have shared custody is because Devon travels a lot. That's the only reason why he doesn't have shared custody. And they have a healthy relationship with their dad, and he gets to be a part of their life even though their parents are separated. So I do think that it's good not just for Black kids, but for all kids, that, just because your parents are separated doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It's definitely something that I wish I had when I was a kid, because, my parents are separated. Yeah. And, and things ended up, like, fine. Like, I was extremely lucky with how little it affected my stability growing up. And I wish that for people who didn't have that stability, I wish that there was more media, especially with Black families, showing that even though your parents are separated, it's not the end of the world, and you can still have a happy family unit.
Absolutely, yeah.
What about y'all?
I guess for me, well, honestly, a lot of your ideas are stuff that I completely agree with. But for me, well, so I have like a specific story, and like I'm slowly chipping away at it. It's not like solely focused on like the Black experience, but I really more wanted to focus on like the setting, because like obviously it's me being in New York, like I find like urban landscapes just like inherently cool, and just like want to like portray that like accurately animation. But the big thing about being an urban environment for me in New York is that it's kind of natural to just be exposed to a lot of different cultures. It's just like night and day from like me growing up in Atlanta, where it kind of felt like I was one of the few students of color in my class, to going to like my first real class up here, where the class was mostly full of students of color. You really get like exposed to people. So that's why, if there's one thing I want to portray is that like just like characters of like multiple different cultures, just like portrayed well, but then just just like vibing, because like even if like my story would be like ideally take like having a lot of like Y2K like future influences in there, it's still got that like urban grit to it, because like I still like I know there was like a lot of like stuff like maybe like the 2000s, some obscure stuff that really portrayed that like urban city vibe, but there's not really a lot of stuff since that really portrays that. And I just gotta represent Brooklyn first and foremost, so I would definitely love to like just like add that to the sphere, so to speak.
So anyway, Carousel, were you thinking about your answer?
I was thinking about my answer. Did you finish when I dropped?
Yeah, exactly. When you
okay,
dropped.
So goody, good timing, I guess. Well, not good, but okay, so for me, speaking as a Afro-Latinx woman, I would really like to see more Latina characters in more varying roles. Like, I love Luz, as I've said, and I would love to see more characters like her. I would love to write characters like her. When I eventually transition away from MLP, or transition Honey away from MLP, my character Honey Chris, I'm definitely going to focus more on her as a character of color, because she is, except Equestria Girls has pastel colors, but I always imagined Princess Cadence as an Afro-Latina, so Honey is mixed that and white with Big Mac. So when I eventually take Honey into her own story, I'll definitely be focusing on her as a mixed race, still Afro-Latina, like probably focusing more on Cadence's side of the family for obvious reasons. Also, I would just like to see more diversity within genres that don't have it yet. Like, I would love to see more diversity in sci-fi, diversity in fantasy, and more acceptance of diversity in those genres. I'm a huge fan of sci-fi, as a fan of Doctor Who, that has been a fan of Doctor Who for a long time. And recently, there has been a couple of companions of color, but there hasn't been, like, a Latin companion yet, and I often hear people on the internet saying, well, of course, there's not really a big population of that in the UK, and I'm like, so? They're aliens, my guy! Just go somewhere else! Like, you're telling me the 13th Doctor can't take a trip to New York and meet an Afro-Latin young woman with an interest in exploring the stars? I'm not even saying me, I don't like the 13th Doctor, but still, I would still go, because that would be an amazing opportunity for someone who doesn't get to travel a lot, getting to travel the stars and see herself in the stars. So yeah, they have a time machine and a space machine. They don't need to stay. I realize it's a UK show, but that does not limit the representation you can have. Also, still, like, it's also a television show. You can represent other, you can represent other groups besides, white, and more recently, Black companions. I mean, yes, more, please. There's only been, 3 in total in, 50 plus years of the show. Please do more. But, just branch out. Widen your horizons. More, please. Yeah, I would love to see that. And just having lived in New York my whole life, basically, what was previously stated, I would love to see more urban stories focused on. I mean, obviously there are, but I love that environment, so it's something that I would tell even if there are stories that exist like that. I mean, there are 2 shows, both on Nickelodeon, that explore a Latina character going to a performing arts high school, but as a Latina that went to a performing arts high school, I'll tell the 3rd! That was a really unique experience for me growing up. Just doing all those things and experiencing all those things. The amount of stories that I have from that time are just, I can't even quantify them. They're that rich, and they're like, for better or worse, that school was very diverse, and it showed me a lot of things, and I would love to show that on screen. And I would just love to tell the stories of the kinds of people that I grew up around. Like, and just living as a New York Puerto Rican, like, that's a pretty niche, like, sort of living environment. And I mean, I lived among, like, the Jewish community as well, because I lived in Washington Heights. I would love to tell the story of a mixed Jewish and Hispanic household, because those communities are actually very mixed where I grew up. And so if I was to tell a story about New York, I would probably, even though I myself am not Jewish, I grew up in, like, a very mixed Hispanic Jewish community, and I would love to tell a story of a girl like me, only with, like, the heritage of both of these things that I grew up very near and dear to. Yeah, I did ballet for a long time in a Jewish school with a lot of Hispanic classmates as well as myself. So it's just something that I've always wanted to tell that specific intersection of.
Yeah. I think that. Oh, Sam, I think that's all the questions.
I mean, it was a good discussion. So I think we're good.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
This was a really, really solid discussion. I'm really happy with it.
As am I. I'm really appreciative of the platform that you guys have given us to, talk about our experiences, our stories, and what we'd like to see from animation. I really enjoyed my time here.
I'm glad.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. It's like
we're
good
me.
people or something.
Never doubted it, ma'am. Never doubted it.
Okay, so where can people find you guys if they want to stalk you on the internet?
All right. So you can find me on YouTube. My channel name is Sketchy the Changeling. Tumblr is also sketchy-the-changeling. My Twitter is @sketchybug. For the grown-ups, @sketchybug_AD. Be 18 or be gone. And I think that's all my socials.
Oh, now I'm afraid, but okay.
Okay, so for me, this is gonna be a bit of a doozy. So, on YouTube, you can find me as Kashkash, KASHCASH. I am on Twitter, at KASH_CASH. My art Twitter and Instagram are Cashed Art, KASHED Art. And I think the rest of my socials are probably my YouTube header. So if you see it, you'll probably find everything else.
I just think of like Krusty Krab, but like Cash.
Oh. Cash. Oh boy, that stutter that just happened on my Discord sound.
Yeah, I heard a little bit, but
yeah, it's that internet. It's saying wrap up this fucking podcast this instant, or you're not gonna finish. So I think I'll just listen to that internet and give you my socials now. You can basically find me on Twitter, DeviantArt, and Discord, and TikTok as Carousel Unique. No spaces, just Carousel Unique. Peep the fact that I still use My Little Pony for all my socials despite G4 being over. And you can also find me on Tumblr as beach-city-mystery-girl at tumblr.com, although I barely use it because people bother me there, but it's fine. If you want to see more of my artwork, you can check out Honeycrisp-Tales on Tumblr, or just my Twitter, because I post everything there anyway. And if you want to give me money, I'm sure you can find those links somewhere. Chill.
Yeah, and then we're Animation Communication. In case you've never listened to a podcast, we're almost at 50, so we got some more if you're new, I guess. So we're on all the podcast places. We usually upload on Wednesdays, except this month has been shaky. But generally we upload Wednesdays, 6 a.m. Eastern on podcast networks for your commute that you're not doing because of COVID. And then YouTube, 4 p.m. Eastern, in case you like YouTube better. It's just a loop, so it's not. Don't expect anything fancy. And subscribe to our main channel. You know, I always make fun of myself because everyone's just like, oh, I want pony stuff. Like, who are you? I remember watching KP when I was like 12, and I'm like, no, watch me now, please. So. Like, comment, subscribe. That's it. That's all I want to say.
Anyway, thank you so much again for all of you for joining us today. This was I'm really happy with the discussion we had, and you're more than welcome to come back anytime.
I'll definitely keep that in mind.
You know.
Thank you.
Oh, I'd love to.
Yeah, y'all got my contacts. If y'all ever need me to come back on again, hit your boy up. I don't bite.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah,
But
hopefully
thanks,
I'll be
guys.
more service.
Thanks again. I was like in the back of my head. I was just like, are we gonna get through this podcast without mentioning Tyler Perry? But you know, we did. So.
Look, it's the thing we signed up for. We kind of have to. It's in the Black people contract.
Yeah, like I was not about to come onto a podcast highlighting Black creators and not shade Tyler Perry.
He's getting a little bit of history revisionism too, so it's good to know he was still shit at making movies.
All right, bye everyone. See you next week or in the past, whatever you decide to do.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Animation Communication on YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider. We are really hoping this show makes a difference in how people view animation and media, as well as giving and providing advice for people all over the world who like or want to join the animation or media industry. If you liked what you heard, please remember to subscribe and rate those 5 stars, as well as tell your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our main YouTube channel, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, and turn those notifications on. My name is Scribbler, and you have been listening to Animation Communication.